The sprawling Air Force Academy campus gleamed in the Colorado sunshine, its iconic chapel spires reaching toward the clear blue sky like a modern cathedral dedicated to flight. For the 68 members of Cadet Squadron 21, this perfect autumn day marked the beginning of their most anticipated training experience, actual flight time in the T-38 Talon supersonic jet trainers. Among them stood Cadet First Class Samantha Sam Mitchell, one of only 8 women in the squadron. At 22, she carried herself with the disciplined posture of someone who had spent years proving she belonged. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform impeccable, her expression a careful mask of professional composure that revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. "All right, gather around," called Major Deanna Wells, the squadron's training officer. Tall and authoritative, Wells had been one of the Air Force's first female combat pilots during Desert Storm, and now served as both instructor and mentor to the female cadets who followed her pioneering path. The cadets formed a semicircle on the tarmac as Major Wells gestured to an older man standing beside her. "This is Chief Master Sergeant Thomas Riley, recently assigned to our maintenance division. He'll be overseeing the technical aspects of your flight training program and conducting your aircraft systems briefings." Sam studied the newcomer with careful attention. Chief Riley appeared to be in his early 60s, with a weathered face etched with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His silver-gray hair was cropped in a military cut that he had probably worn for decades. His uniform displayed rows of service ribbons that told a story of long and distinguished service, including what Sam recognized as decorations from Vietnam and subsequent conflicts. What drew her attention, however, was the slight but noticeable tremor in his hands as he raised them to acknowledge the introduction. "Thank you, Major Wells," Riley said, his voice a gravelly baritone that projected easily across the tarmac. "I've been turning wrenches on Air Force jets for over 40 years, from F-4 Phantoms to these T-38s and everything in between. My job is to make sure you understand what keeps these birds in the air, not just how to fly them. A good pilot knows their aircraft from the inside out." As Riley began outlining the maintenance aspects of their training schedule, Sam noticed several male cadets exchanging glances and suppressed smiles. Cadet Ryan Thompson, standing next to her, leaned slightly to whisper to his friend Mark Delgado. "Check out Grandpa's hands. Hope he's not the one working on my plane." The comment, though quiet, carried enough for Sam to overhear. She shot Thompson a disapproving look but remained silent, her attention returning to Chief Riley's briefing. After the briefing concluded, the cadets were divided into groups of 4, each assigned to a specific aircraft for familiarization before their actual flight training would begin the following week. Sam found herself grouped with Thompson, Delgado, and another female cadet, Jessica Wung. "Mitchell's group, you're with me?" Chief Riley announced, gesturing toward one of the sleek white T-38s parked nearby. "Let's see what you know about what makes this bird tick." As they approached the aircraft, Riley pulled on a pair of work gloves, a detail Sam noted might be related to his hand tremor. The chief proceeded to conduct a methodical walk-around inspection, pointing out key components and systems while testing the cadets' knowledge with rapid-fire questions. "Cadet Thompson," he called suddenly, "what's the maximum operating altitude for the T-38? 50,000 feet, Chief," Thompson answered promptly. "And the service ceiling?" Thompson hesitated, his confidence faltering. The same, sir, 50,000 feet." Riley shook his head. "Service ceiling is 55,000 feet. Know the difference, it might matter someday." He moved on without dwelling on the error. "Cadet Mitchell, what's the fuel capacity?" "Standard internal fuel is 639 gallons, Chief," Sam answered without hesitation. "Maximum range at optimum altitude is approximately 1,140 miles. Riley nodded approvingly before continuing the inspection. When he removed his gloves to demonstrate the proper way to check the control surfaces, the tremor in his hands became more pronounced. Thompson nudged Delgado, both of them watching the chief's shaking hands with poorly concealed amusement. Sam felt a flash of anger at their disrespect, but remained focused on Riley's instructions. "Something funny, cadets?" Riley asked without turning around, his back still to Thompson and Delgado as he inspected an aileron. "No, Chief," they responded in unison, straightening immediately. "Good," Riley replied, still not looking at them. "Because there's nothing funny about aircraft maintenance. Sloppy attitudes lead to sloppy work, and sloppy work in this business gets people killed. He turned to face them, his expression serious but not angry. These hands have kept planes flying through 3 wars and more peacetime hours than you've been alive. They may shake, but they've never failed. The rebuke was delivered with such quiet dignity that even Thompson had the grace to look embarrassed. Sam felt a surge of respect for the chief's straightforward handling of the situation. The rest of the inspection proceeded without incident, with Riley demonstrating encyclopedic knowledge of the aircraft systems while testing the cadets' understanding of flight mechanics, emergency procedures, and maintenance requirements. As they completed the session, Riley addressed them one final time. Next week, you'll begin actual flight training with your instructor pilots. Between now and then, I expect each of you to thoroughly review the T-38 system's manual. When you're 40,000 feet up with warning lights flashing, it's too late to wish you'd paid more attention on the ground. Later that evening in the dormitory common room, Sam found herself alone with Cadet Wung as they reviewed their aircraft systems manuals. "What did you think of Chief Riley?" Wung asked, looking up from her studies. Sam considered the question carefully. "I think he knows more about these aircraft than all our instructors combined. The tremor in his hands is unfortunate, but clearly it hasn't affected his abilities." Wung nodded. "I noticed how Thompson and Delgado were acting, pretty immature. And disrespectful," Sam added. "My grandfather had a similar tremor, Parkinson's disease. It didn't affect his mind at all, just his motor control. He was a mechanical engineer and brilliant until the day he died." Their conversation was interrupted when Thompson and Delgado entered, along with several other male cadets. They were laughing about something, but quieted when they saw Sam and Wung. "Studying hard, Mitchell?" Thompson asked, his tone suggesting he found the concept amusing. "Always," Sam replied evenly. "I want to know this aircraft inside and out before I take it up." "It's just a familiarization flight," Delgado said dismissively. "The instructor does all the real work. Besides, that's what we have mechanics for, to worry about how the plane works." Sam closed her manual deliberately. "Chief Riley seems to think pilots should understand their aircraft thoroughly. Given his experience, I'm inclined to take his advice." "Old Shaky," Thompson laughed. "I'm surprised he can still read the maintenance manuals, let alone follow them. Did you see his hands?" "I saw a senior NCO with 4 decades of experience and a chest full of service ribbons," Sam replied coolly. "But I guess you were too busy being clever to notice those details." Thompson's smile faded, but before he could respond, Major Wells entered the common room. The cadets immediately stood at attention. "At ease," Wells said, "just checking in before tomorrow's classroom session." Her gaze swept the room, taking in the open manuals and the evident tension. "Everything all right in here?" "Yes, ma'am," they responded in unison. "Good. I expect everyone to be thoroughly prepared for tomorrow's systems exam. Chief Riley will be conducting part of the evaluation, and he doesn't tolerate unprepared cadets." She fixed Thompson and Delgado with a knowing look. "He may have a tremor, but I assure you, his mind is sharper than most of yours will ever be. There's a reason he was personally requested for this program." After Major Wells departed, the common room remained uncomfortably silent for several moments. Finally, Thompson muttered something to Delgado, and they left, followed by the other male cadets. Sam returned to her studies, but her mind kept returning to Chief Riley and his quiet dignity in the face of the cadets' disrespect. There was clearly more to his story than a pair of shaking hands, and she found herself curious about the experiences that had brought him to the academy at what must be the twilight of his career. What she couldn't know then was that those shaking hands would soon become central to an experience that would change not just her perspective, but the attitudes of every cadet in Squadron 21, a high-altitude crisis that would test both their training and their character in ways none of them could anticipate. The following week passed in a blur of classroom instruction, simulator sessions, and rigorous testing. As promised, Chief Riley conducted part of the system's evaluation, his questions probing deep technical knowledge rather than the surface-level understanding many cadets had prepared for. Sam passed with flying colors, her thorough study habits paying off, while Thompson and several others barely scraped by. Now the moment of truth had arrived, their first actual flights in the T-38 Talon. The cadets gathered at the flight line early on a crisp Monday morning, their excitement palpable despite the professional demeanor they struggled to maintain. Major Wells stood before them, clipboard in hand. "Listen up, people. Today you'll experience your first familiarization flights. Each of you will be paired with an instructor pilot who will handle takeoff and landing. Once airborne, you'll be permitted limited control of the aircraft to get a feel for its handling characteristics." She began reading off assignments. "Mitchell and Wong, you'll be with Captain Rodriguez, Thompson, Delgado, and Henderson with Major Briggs." The assignments continued until all cadets were paired with instructors. Sam felt a twinge of disappointment. She had hoped to fly with Major Wells herself, given the woman's pioneering status as a female combat pilot. Captain Rodriguez was well regarded, but lacked the historical significance that Wells represented to the female cadets. As the briefing concluded, Chief Riley appeared, carrying several clipboards with pre-flight checklists. He distributed them to the instructor pilots, exchanging a few technical comments with each. When he reached Captain Rodriguez, their conversation lasted notably longer. "What's that about?" Wong whispered to Sam. "Probably just discussing the aircraft," Sam replied, though she too was curious about the extended conversation. Rodriguez approached them moments later. "Mitchell, Wong, we've had a slight change. Chief Riley will be joining us for our flight." Both cadets blinked in surprise. "The chief is coming along, sir?" Sam asked. "That's correct. He'll be in the rear seat to observe systems performance. It's standard procedure occasionally." Rodriguez checked his watch. "Let's get moving. Pre-flight in 15 minutes." As they walked toward the flight line, Wong leaned closer to Sam. "Is that really standard procedure? I've never heard of maintenance personnel flying along on training flights." "Me neither," Sam admitted. "But the T-38 is a two-seater with dual controls. I guess the rear seat can be used for either an instructor or an observer." They found Chief Riley already conducting a pre-flight inspection of their assigned aircraft, his movements methodical despite the visible tremor in his hands. He was now wearing a flight suit rather than his usual uniform, another surprise that added to Sam's curiosity. "Morning, cadets," he greeted them without looking up from his inspection. "Ready for your first dance with the Talon?" "Yes, Chief," they responded in unison. "Good, this bird has a few quirks I've been monitoring. Nothing serious, just some instrumentation inconsistencies I want to observe in flight." He completed his inspection and made several notations on his clipboard. "Captain Rodriguez tells me you two scored highest on the systems exam. Impressive." "Thank you, Chief," Sam replied. "Your review sessions were very helpful." Riley nodded acknowledgement as Captain Rodriguez joined them. The pre-flight briefing proceeded normally, with Rodriguez outlining the flight plan, a simple route that would take them east of the academy for basic maneuver practice before returning. "Any questions?" Rodriguez asked as he concluded. "No, sir," both cadets responded. "Chief Riley will observe from the rear seat during Wong's flight segment, then switch to my aircraft for Mitchell's segment," Rodriguez explained. "Let's suit up." Soon they were strapping into the aircraft. Rodriguez in the front seat with primary controls, Wong in the center seat where she could observe the instruments and controls, and Chief Riley in the rear seat. Sam watched from the ground as the canopy closed and the engines started. The high-pitched whine of the twin J-85 engines grew to a roar as the T-38 taxied toward the runway. Minutes later, it was airborne, climbing steeply into the Colorado sky with the characteristic eagerness of the nimble jet trainer. Sam spent the next hour reviewing her flight plan and watching other cadet flights take off and land. Finally, the T-38 carrying Wong, Rodriguez, and Riley returned, touching down smoothly before taxiing back to the flight line. Wong emerged from the aircraft, her face flushed with excitement despite her attempt to maintain professional composure. "That was incredible," she told Sam quietly as they exchanged places. "The chief barely said a word the whole flight, just took notes and watched the instruments." Sam nodded and approached the aircraft, where Captain Rodriguez was completing his post-flight checklist. "Ready for your segment, Cadet Mitchell?" "Yes, sir," she replied, unable to completely suppress her enthusiasm. Sam climbed into the center seat and began strapping in, performing the safety checks exactly as she'd been trained. Chief Riley remained in the rear seat, his clipboard now filled with handwritten notes. "How did the aircraft perform, Chief?" Sam asked as she adjusted her oxygen mask. "Generally good," Riley replied. Some anomalous readings in the environmental control system, but nothing critical. Captain Rodriguez completed his pre-flight checks. We're cleared for takeoff, ready back there. Ready, sir, Sam confirmed. All set, Riley added. The engines spooled up again, the powerful thrust pushing Sam back into her seat as the T-38 accelerated down the runway. The takeoff was smooth and professional, the aircraft leaping into the sky with impressive acceleration. Once they reached cruising altitude, Rodriguez guided them through some basic maneuvers to demonstrate the aircraft's handling characteristics. All right, Cadet Mitchell, I'm giving you limited control now. Keep it smooth and gentle, small inputs only. Yes, sir, Sam acknowledged, her heart racing as she placed her hands on the stick. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced in the simulators. The living, responsive feel of the actual aircraft as it responded to her control inputs. She executed several gentle turns and shallow climbs, marveling at the T-38's responsiveness. Good control touch, Cadet, Rodriguez commented. Let's try a slightly steeper turn, 30 degrees of bank maintaining altitude. Sam executed the maneuver precisely, keeping the altimeter steady as she banked the aircraft. The Colorado landscape tilted outside her window, the Rocky Mountains majestic in the distance. Excellent, Rodriguez said. Now level off and wheel. His instruction was interrupted by a sudden warning light on the instrument panel. Environmental control system fault, he reported, his voice remaining calm as he scanned the instruments. Cabin pressure dropping slightly, nothing critical yet, but will terminate the training portion and return to base. Sam's disappointment at cutting the flight short was immediately overshadowed by the professional interest in how the situation would be handled. This was, after all, exactly the type of scenario they had studied. Minor system malfunctions that required proper procedure without constituting an emergency. From the rear seat, Chief Riley spoke up. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to check the readouts on the auxiliary panel. Go ahead, Chief, Rodriguez replied, maintaining control of the aircraft as he began a gentle turn back toward the academy. Sam heard Riley unbuckling to lean forward for a better view of the side panel. Despite the non-critical nature of the warning, she felt a slight tension in the cockpit. Any malfunction at 20,000 feet deserved serious attention. Pressure differential is at 6.2 and holding, Rodriguez reported. Not dangerous, but continuing to descend as precaution. Sir, Riley's voice came from behind. I've seen this pattern before. There's a relay in the pressurization control module that tends to stick on these older airframes. With your permission, I might be able to reset it without taking us all the way down. Rodriguez hesitated, then nodded. Go ahead, Chief, if you think it's safe. We're still well within emergency descent range of the field if needed. What happened next would remain etched in Sam's memory forever. Chief Riley reached toward an access panel near the rear seat, his hands visibly trembling as he unscrewed the fasteners with practiced efficiency despite the tremor. Sam found herself holding her breath, suddenly aware that the man they had mockingly called Old Shaky behind his back was now performing delicate technical work in a pressurized cockpit at 18,000 feet. Cadet Mitchell, Riley said calmly, in your system's manual review, do you recall the backup circuit pathway for the environmental control system? Sam's mind raced through the technical diagrams she had studied so meticulously. Yes, Chief, it routes through the secondary power distribution node behind the right console. Correct. I need you to watch the pressure differential gauge and tell me if it changes when I bypass this relay. Sam fixed her eyes on the gauge as Riley worked behind her, his movements precise despite the trembling of his hands. It seemed impossible that such shaking fingers could perform the delicate adjustments required, yet he worked with the confident familiarity of someone who had done this countless times before. Ready, he said after a moment, attempting bypass now. There was a brief flicker of the cockpit lights, and then the pressure gauge stabilized, the warning light on the main panel extinguishing. Pressure differential stabilizing at 8 psi, Sam reported. Warning light is off. Confirmed, Rodriguez said, his voice reflecting professional appreciation. Nice work, Chief. Systems showing normal operation now. It's a temporary fix, Riley cautioned. The relay will need replacement on the ground, but it should hold for the remainder of our flight. The tension in the cockpit eased, replaced by a renewed focus on the training mission. Rodriguez guided them back toward the training area rather than immediately returning to base. Since we've resolved the issue, let's continue with your flight segment, Cadet Mitchell. You handled that situation with excellent composure. Now, let's try that steep turn again. For the next 40 minutes, Sam experienced the pure joy of flight in one of the world's most responsive jet trainers, her confidence growing with each successful maneuver. All the while, she remained acutely aware of Chief Riley in the rear seat, the man whose shaking hands had just demonstrated more practical knowledge and skill than many of her fellow cadets might acquire in their entire careers. As they finally returned to base and landed, Sam felt a new perspective forming, one that would soon challenge not just her own preconceptions, but those of every cadet who had laughed at the Chief's trembling hands. Word of the in-flight repair spread quickly through Cadet Squadron 21. By dinner time, most cadets had heard some version of how Chief Riley had fixed a potentially serious malfunction mid-flight, though the details varied with each telling. Sam found herself repeatedly asked to recount what had actually happened. "So his hands were shaking the whole time?" Thompson asked as several cadets gathered around Sam's table in the dining hall. "Yes," Sam confirmed, but it didn't seem to matter. He knew exactly what he was doing, tremor or no tremor. "But wasn't it dangerous?" Delgado pressed. "I mean, one wrong move inside an access panel could cause bigger problems, right?" Sam considered this. Captain Rodriguez wouldn't have authorized it if he thought it was dangerous, and the chief clearly knew that specific system intimately. It wasn't some random attempt. He recognized the exact problem and knew precisely how to address it. Cadet Wang, who had been quietly eating her dinner, looked up. "My grandfather has essential tremor. It's a neurological condition that causes shaking, usually in the hands. It gets worse when you're tired or stressed, but it doesn't affect your knowledge or abilities. Just makes things look shakier from the outside." "Still," Thompson insisted, "I wouldn't want someone with shaky hands working on my jet while I'm flying it." "Those shaky hands are the reason we completed our training flight instead of returning early," Sam pointed out. "And from what I saw, Chief Riley has probably forgotten more about these aircraft than most of us will ever know." The conversation shifted as Major Wells approached their table, causing the cadets to straighten reflexively. "As you were," Wells said, setting down her tray and joining them, an unusual move that immediately captured their attention. "I hear you had an eventful flight, Cadet Mitchell." "Yes, ma'am," Sam replied. "We experienced an environmental control system fault that Chief Riley was able to address in flight." Wells nodded. "Captain Rodriguez briefed me. He was impressed with both the Chief's technical intervention and your composure during the situation." She glanced around the table. "I thought this might be a good opportunity to provide some context about Chief Riley that you won't find in any official biography." The cadets exchanged curious glances, instantly attentive. Thomas Riley enlisted in 1972 during the Vietnam era. He served as a crew chief on F-4 Phantoms, often performing maintenance in combat conditions. During one incident, he continued repairing an aircraft during an enemy mortar attack, enabling the pilot to evacuate wounded personnel from a forward base. Wells paused, letting this sink in. Throughout his career, he served in virtually every conflict our nation has engaged in: Desert Storm, the Balkans, Iraq, Afghanistan. He's been offered promotion to officer ranks multiple times and declined each time, preferring to remain hands-on with the aircraft. "Ma'am, if I may ask," Sam ventured, "what causes his hand tremor?" "That's not my story to tell in detail, Cadet," Wells replied. "But I will say it's the result of injuries sustained during his service. Injuries that would have led many to accept a medical retirement, but not Chief Riley." The Major's gaze swept across the table, making eye contact with each cadet. "The Chief requested assignment to the Academy specifically to work with cadets. He believes the next generation of Air Force officers needs to understand aircraft from the inside out, not just as platforms to be flown, but as complex systems to be understood." After Major Wells departed, the cadets remained unusually thoughtful. Even Thompson seemed subdued, picking at his food rather than continuing his earlier skepticism. "I feel kind of awful now," Wang admitted quietly. "The way some people have been talking about him behind his back." "We all do," Sam said. "But feeling bad doesn't change anything. How we act going forward does." The next morning, the scheduled training continued with classroom instruction focused on emergency procedures. Chief Riley was leading the session, his diagrams and technical explanations as precise as ever despite the persistent tremor in his hands as he pointed to different components on the projected schematics. Sam noticed a marked difference in the cadets' attitudes. Where before there had been suppressed smirks and whispered comments about his shaking hands, now there was attentive focus and genuine respect. Even Thompson and Delgado were taking detailed notes, their former dismissiveness replaced by earnest attention. After class, Sam lingered as other cadets filed out. Chief Riley was gathering his materials, carefully organizing his notes with hands that seemed to shake more prominently after the extended teaching session. "Was there something else, Cadet Mitchell?" he asked, noticing her presence. "Yes, Chief," Sam replied. "I wanted to thank you properly for your assistance during our flight yesterday. Your intervention allowed me to complete my full training segment." Riley nodded acknowledgement. "Just doing my job, Cadet. Every minute of flight time is valuable in your development." Sam hesitated, then decided direct honesty was the appropriate approach. "Sir, I also want to apologize. Many of us were less than respectful regarding your hand tremor before yesterday's flight. It was unprofessional and wrong." The chief studied her for a moment, his weathered face unreadable. "Apology accepted, Mitchell, but unnecessary. I've been dealing with these shakes for 15 years. I'm well aware of the initial impression they create." He finished packing his materials, then continued more reflectively. "In my experience, cadets and young officers often confuse physical appearance with capability. It's a natural human tendency, but a dangerous one in our profession. The pilot who looks the part isn't always the one you want in a crisis, and the mechanic with the steadiest hands isn't necessarily the one with the deepest understanding of the aircraft." "I understand that better now, sir," Sam said. "Good, because someday you may command a unit with all sorts of people under your authority, some who look the part perfectly and others who don't. Your job will be to recognize genuine capability regardless of its packaging." Later that week, the flight training program continued with more advanced maneuvers. Sam and Wung were again assigned to Captain Rodriguez, but this time without Chief Riley accompanying them. As they completed their pre-flight checks, Rodriguez briefed them on the day's objectives. "Today we'll be practicing recovery from unusual attitudes and basic emergency procedures," he explained. "Nothing too extreme, but designed to build your confidence in the aircraft's handling characteristics under less than ideal conditions." The flight began routinely enough, with basic maneuvers similar to their previous training flight. Both cadets had opportunities to handle the controls under Rodriguez's supervision, practicing gentle aerobatic maneuvers and navigation exercises. About 40 minutes into the flight, as they were transitioning back toward the practice area after a navigation leg, a warning light illuminated on the instrument panel. "Hydraulic pressure dropping," Rodriguez announced, his voice remaining calm and professional. "We're going to terminate the training portion and return to base. This appears to be a genuine malfunction, not a simulated one for training purposes." Sam felt a spike of adrenaline, immediately focusing on the instruments to monitor the situation. The hydraulic system was critical for flight control surfaces. A total failure would make the aircraft significantly more difficult to control. "Primary hydraulic system now reading 0 pressure," Rodriguez reported. "Switching to secondary system. Cadet Mitchell, review the emergency checklist for hydraulic failure." Sam quickly located the laminated emergency procedures card and began reading the checklist items as Rodriguez worked through them methodically. "Secondary hydraulic system engaged and holding pressure," she reported. "All flight control surfaces responding normally to inputs." "Good," Rodriguez affirmed. "We'll maintain current altitude and return directly to base. This isn't an emergency at this stage, but it requires immediate attention." Sam and Wung maintained professional composure, monitoring instruments and communicating clearly as Rodriguez guided the T-38 back toward the Academy airfield. The secondary hydraulic system was functioning properly, but the loss of the primary system reduced their safety margin considerably. "Academy Tower, Talon 27, declaring a precautionary emergency with hydraulic malfunction," Rodriguez radioed. "Requesting priority landing, runway 3. Talon 27, Academy Tower, you are cleared for priority landing, runway 3. Emergency vehicles standing by. Wind 240 at 5 knots. As they began their approach, a second warning light illuminated, this one indicating pressure fluctuations in the secondary hydraulic system. Secondary system showing pressure fluctuations, Sam reported, her voice steady despite the increasing seriousness of their situation. Acknowledged, Rodriguez replied. We'll continue approach. Be prepared for manual reversion if the secondary system fails completely. The implications were clear. If both hydraulic systems failed, the aircraft would revert to mechanical backup controls with significantly reduced responsiveness and increased control forces. Landing in such a configuration would be challenging even for an experienced pilot. As they descended through 5,000 feet, the radio crackled again. Talon 27, this is ground technical. Chief Riley requests your exact hydraulic pressure readings and fluctuation pattern. Rodriguez glanced at Sam. Cadet Mitchell, relay the information. Sam keyed her microphone. Ground technical, Talon 27. Primary system pressure 0, secondary system fluctuating between 1,800 and 2,200 psi at approximately 3-second intervals. There was a brief pause before Riley's voice came through clearly. Talon 27, that pattern indicates a potential servo valve malfunction in the primary system that's causing feedback oscillation in the secondary. Captain Rodriguez, recommend you pull and reset circuit breaker panel alpha, breaker number 3, then cycle the hydraulic selector switch from secondary to primary and back to secondary. Rodriguez considered this for a moment, then nodded. Ground technical will attempt that procedure. Stand by. Following Riley's instructions precisely, Rodriguez located the specified circuit breaker, reset it, then cycled the hydraulic selector switch as directed. For several tense seconds, nothing seemed to change. Then suddenly both warning lights extinguished. Hydraulic pressure stabilizing, Sam reported, watching the gauges with intense focus. Primary system now showing 3,000 psi, secondary system holding steady at 3,100 psi. Ground technical Talon 27, Rodriguez radioed. Procedure successful. Both hydraulic systems now show normal pressure. Continuing approach. Talon 27, good work, came Riley's response. Chief Riley is looking forward to finding out exactly what's going on in that hydraulic system. Based on the symptoms, he suspects a specific mechanical issue that's been documented in that airframe previously. The landing proceeded normally, the aircraft responding perfectly to control inputs now that both hydraulic systems were functioning properly. As they taxied toward the flight line, Sam could see a small group waiting for them, including Chief Riley, standing slightly apart, his clipboard already in hand. Once the aircraft was parked and the engines shut down, the three of them climbed out to find themselves the center of attention. Several instructors and maintenance personnel had gathered, along with a group of cadets who had been on the flight line during the incident. Chief Riley approached first, his focus entirely professional. Captain Rodriguez, I'd like to inspect that hydraulic system immediately, if you don't mind. The symptom pattern matches an issue we've seen in 2 other airframes recently. Of course, Chief, Rodriguez agreed. The aircraft is all yours. As maintenance personnel began their inspection, Major Wells approached Sam and Wang. Well handled, cadets. Captain Rodriguez speaks highly of your performance during the situation. Thank you, ma'am, they responded in unison. It was Chief Riley's diagnostic insight that made the difference, Sam added. He identified the exact problem and solution based just on the pressure readings we provided. Wells nodded. That's why he's here. 40 years of hands-on experience creates a kind of intuitive understanding that can't be taught in classrooms or simulators. Sam noticed several other cadets watching Chief Riley as he directed the maintenance team's inspection of the hydraulic system. Where once there had been mockery of his shaking hands, there was now evident respect and interest. Thompson and Delgado were among them, their expressions notably more humble than they had been just days earlier. The incident had done more than just avert a potential emergency landing. It had fundamentally shifted the cadets' understanding of what true expertise looked like, and reminded them that appearances could be deeply misleading when it came to assessing capability and worth. What none of them yet realized was that this hydraulic malfunction was merely a prelude to a far more serious situation that would soon test not just Chief Riley's technical expertise, but the character and judgment of every cadet in Squadron 21. 2 weeks passed, during which the cadets' training intensified. Their flight hours increased, along with the complexity of the maneuvers they were permitted to attempt under instructor supervision. The hydraulic incident had faded from immediate conversation, though its impact on the cadets' attitudes remained evident in the new respect afforded to Chief Riley. On a clear Thursday morning, Squadron 21 gathered for a special briefing. Major Wells stood before them with an air of particular significance. "Today marks an important milestone in your training," she began. "You'll be conducting your first formation flights, 2 aircraft flying in close proximity, requiring precise control and constant situational awareness." A murmur of excitement passed through the cadets. Formation flying represented a significant step toward the advanced skills they would need as Air Force pilots. "You'll fly in the same pairs as your previous training flights," Wells continued. "Each aircraft will have an instructor pilot in command, but qualified cadets will be permitted limited control during specific portions of the flight." She proceeded to outline the day's flight plan, a relatively simple route that would take them south of the academy for basic formation practice before returning. The emphasis would be on maintaining proper position and spacing rather than complex maneuvers. "Safety is paramount," Wells stressed. "Formation flying leaves zero margin for error. You will follow all instructor commands immediately and precisely." The briefing concluded with detailed weather information and emergency procedures specific to formation flight. As the cadets dispersed to prepare, Sam found herself experiencing both excitement and heightened focus. Formation flying was something she had looked forward to since beginning her training. At the flight line, Sam and Wung met with Captain Rodriguez and their formation partners, Thompson and Delgado, who would be flying with Major Briggs. The 4 cadets listened attentively as the instructors conducted a joint briefing on formation procedures and communication protocols. "Rodriguez's aircraft will take the lead position with Briggs flying wing," Major Wells explained. "Standard separation of 3 feet between wingtips during close formation. Hand signals will be primary communication method, with radio as backup." Chief Riley approached as the briefing concluded, clipboard in hand. "Aircraft are prepped and ready, sir," he reported to Rodriguez. "Both have received complete hydraulic system inspections following the issue 2 weeks ago." "Thank you, Chief," Rodriguez replied. "Any concerns we should be aware of?" "Nothing significant, sir. We've replaced the servo valves in both hydraulic systems on your aircraft as a precautionary measure. Major Briggs's aircraft has had routine maintenance only." The pre-flight preparations proceeded smoothly, with each cadet performing their checks with meticulous attention to detail. The incident 2 weeks earlier had reinforced the critical importance of thorough pre-flight procedures. Soon both aircraft were taxiing toward the runway, Rodriguez leading with Briggs following at proper interval. Sam sat in the second seat of Rodriguez's T-38, with Wung in the rear observer position. In Briggs's aircraft, Thompson occupied the second seat with Delgado in the rear. The takeoffs were staggered by 30 seconds, Rodriguez lifting off first with Briggs following. Once airborne, Briggs's aircraft smoothly moved into formation position, taking station off Rodriguez's right wing with practiced precision. "Beautiful day for formation work," Rodriguez commented as they leveled off at 15,000 feet. "Cadet Mitchell, I'll give you limited control once we're established in the practice area. Remember, in formation, every movement must be smooth and gradual. No sudden inputs." "Yes, sir," Sam acknowledged, intensely focused on observing the relative positions of the 2 aircraft. They reached the designated practice area 15 minutes later. The sky was clear blue with excellent visibility, ideal conditions for their first formation experience. "Talon 27, this is Talon 31, came Major Briggs's voice over the radio. "In position and ready for training exercises." "Roger 31, Rodriguez responded. "We'll begin with basic position holding, then proceed to gentle turns and shallow climbs and descents." For the next 30 minutes, the 2 aircraft moved through the sky in perfect coordination, maintaining their precise spacing through various basic maneuvers. Sam watched with rapt attention, absorbing every nuance of the formation techniques demonstrated by the instructors. "Cadet Mitchell, I'm giving you control now," Rodriguez announced. "Keep it extremely gentle. Maintain current heading and altitude. Remember that every input affects our position relative to 3-1. I have control, Sam acknowledged, carefully placing her hands on the stick and throttle. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced in her previous flights. The presence of another aircraft just feet away created an entirely different awareness, each tiny movement of her aircraft immediately visible in relation to their wingman. Under Rodriguez's close supervision, Sam maintained position for several minutes, making only the smallest inputs necessary to hold their course and altitude. The experience was both exhilarating and intensely demanding, requiring absolute concentration. "Good work, Mitchell," Rodriguez commented. "I'm taking control back now. We'll demonstrate a formation turn, then possibly let you try one if you're ready." "Yes, sir," Sam replied, relinquishing control. Rodriguez executed a perfect formation turn, the two aircraft banking simultaneously while maintaining their precise relationship. Through hand signals, he communicated with Briggs, coordinating their movements with practiced efficiency. As they rolled out of the turn, a warning light suddenly illuminated on Rodriguez's instrument panel. "Engine temperature rising on number 2, he reported calmly, immediately checking the gauges. "Cadet Mitchell, run the checklist for engine overheat." Sam quickly located and read the emergency procedure, while Rodriguez adjusted throttle settings to reduce strain on the affected engine. "Temperature continuing to rise," Rodriguez noted, his voice remaining professional despite the developing situation. "Talon 3-1, this is 2-7. We're experiencing an engine issue and will be breaking formation to return to base." "Roger 2-7, Briggs responded. "We'll maintain loose trail position during your return." The situation appeared manageable until a second warning light illuminated, this one indicating dropping oil pressure in the same engine. "This is developing into a more significant issue," Rodriguez stated, his tone still calm but with added urgency. "Engine 2 showing multiple failure indicators, preparing for potential shutdown." Sam felt her heart rate increase, but kept her focus on the procedures, monitoring instruments and relaying readings as Rodriguez worked through the emergency steps. Wang remained silent in the rear seat, maintaining the discipline they had all been taught for emergency situations. "Academy Tower, Talon 2-7 declaring emergency," Rodriguez radioed. "Engine failure indicators on number 2 engine, returning to base immediately." "Roger, Talon 2-7, you are cleared direct to runway 3, emergency vehicles standing by." The situation escalated rapidly when a loud bang resonated through the airframe, followed by violent shuddering. "Engine 2 failure," Rodriguez announced, his hands moving quickly across the controls. "Shutting down Engine 2 and preparing for single-engine landing." The T-38, designed to fly on a single engine if necessary, continued toward the Academy, though with reduced performance. Rodriguez maintained precise control despite the asymmetric thrust condition. Then, without warning, warning lights began flashing across the instrument panel. "Multiple system failures," Rodriguez reported, his voice tense but controlled. "We're losing electrical systems and hydraulic pressure dropping rapidly." Sam's training kicked in as she monitored the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Primary hydraulic system pressure at 0. Secondary system failing, now reading below 1,000 psi and dropping." "This is highly unusual," Rodriguez stated. "We appear to have cascading failures affecting multiple systems." The implications were severe. Loss of both engines would be catastrophic, while the failing hydraulic systems would make controlling the aircraft increasingly difficult. "Academy Tower, Talon 2-7, Rodriguez transmitted. "Situation deteriorating, multiple system failures, request immediate technical guidance." "Talon 2-7, stand by, connecting you with technical support." Moments later, Chief Riley's voice came through clearly. "Talon 2-7, this is Riley. Give me your complete status." Rodriguez provided a rapid but comprehensive summary of the multiple failures they were experiencing. Sam noted that despite the serious situation, his voice remained steady and professional. There was a brief pause before Riley responded. "Captain, based on the pattern of failures, I suspect a catastrophic failure in Engine 2 has damaged the hydraulic lines and electrical conduits that run adjacent to it. Your priority is maintaining control with the degrading hydraulic pressure. Understood, Chief, Rodriguez replied. Currently managing with reduced control responsiveness, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. You need to access the emergency hydraulic accumulator to provide pressure for landing control surfaces, Riley instructed. It's located behind the right auxiliary panel. That should give you enough hydraulic pressure for approximately 3 minutes, sufficient for your approach and landing. The access requires removing the panel while in flight, Rodriguez noted, the challenge evident in his voice as he simultaneously flew the struggling aircraft. I'm aware, Captain. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't recommend it, but this situation requires immediate intervention. Rodriguez made a quick decision. Cadet Mitchell, you'll need to perform this procedure while I maintain aircraft control. Cadet Wang, prepare to assist from the rear seat if necessary. Sam felt a surge of adrenaline as the responsibility settled on her shoulders. Yes, sir. What's the procedure, Chief Riley? The panel is located to your right near floor level, Riley explained, his voice remarkably calm given the circumstances. You'll need to remove 4 quarter-turn fasteners, then pull the panel straight out. Behind it, you'll see a red lever marked Emergency Hydraulic Accumulator. Pull it fully to the right position. Sam unbuckled enough to reach the panel, immediately locating the fasteners Riley had described. As she attempted to turn the first one, she found it extremely stiff, either from lack of use or possibly damaged by whatever had caused their cascading failures. The fasteners are extremely tight, Chief, she reported, struggling to turn the first one despite applying significant force. They may be heat damaged from the engine failure, Riley acknowledged. Try using the emergency toolkit located under your seat. There should be a small lever tool that will give you better mechanical advantage. Sam quickly located the kit and found the tool, which resembled a stubby screwdriver with a specialized head designed for the fasteners. Even with this assistance, the fasteners required extraordinary effort to turn. Approaching 10 miles from the field, Rodriguez reported as Sam worked. Hydraulic pressure continuing to drop, control response becoming critically sluggish. The pressure of the moment was intense. If Sam couldn't access the emergency accumulator quickly enough, their ability to control the aircraft for landing would be severely compromised. I've got 2 fasteners loose, she updated, her voice strained from the physical effort. Working on the third. You're doing fine, Cadet, Riley encouraged. Take steady breaths and apply consistent pressure. The third fastener finally yielded, but the fourth proved exceptionally difficult. Sam's hands were beginning to cramp from the effort, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cockpit's climate control. Final fastener is completely stuck, she reported, a edge of frustration entering her voice. Try tapping it sharply with the base of the tool first, then turning, Riley suggested. Sometimes that breaks the corrosion seal. Following his instruction, Sam struck the fastener before attempting to turn it again. This time it moved slightly, then yielded enough for her to complete a full turn. 5 miles from the field, Rodriguez updated. Hydraulic pressure critically low, beginning final approach configuration. With the final fastener released, Sam pulled the panel free, revealing the emergency systems behind it. The red lever Riley had described was immediately visible. I see the emergency accumulator lever, Chief, she confirmed. Pull it fully to the right and hold for 3 seconds, then release, Riley instructed. You should hear a hissing sound as the pressurized fluid enters the system. Sam grasped the lever and pulled with all her strength. For a terrifying moment, it seemed frozen in place. Then suddenly it moved, accompanied by the hissing sound Riley had described. Almost immediately, Rodriguez reported, hydraulic pressure rising, control response improving. Well done, Cadet Mitchell. The accumulator provides limited pressure, Riley cautioned. You have approximately 3 minutes of functional hydraulics for landing. After that, you'll revert to mechanical backup controls. Understood, Rodriguez acknowledged. Beginning final approach now. The next few minutes were among the most intense of Sam's life. Rodriguez guided the damaged T-38 toward the runway with extraordinary skill, compensating for the single-engine configuration while maximizing the benefit of their temporarily restored hydraulic pressure. 3 miles final, he reported. Aircraft responding adequately, gear down. The landing gear extended and locked, confirmed by the indicator lights on the panel. 1 mile final, Rodriguez updated. Airspeed 170 knots, slight crosswind from the right. Sam held her breath as the runway approached, knowing their safety margin was virtually non-existent. The emergency accumulator would be depleted soon, and any further complications could be catastrophic. With remarkable precision, Rodriguez touched down on the runway centerline, the T-38 settling firmly onto the concrete. The aircraft decelerated rapidly, steering response remaining adequate just long enough for them to clear the runway and come to a complete stop. Talon 27 is down safely, Rodriguez reported, the relief evident in his voice despite his professional demeanor. All souls on board unharmed. Emergency vehicles surrounded them immediately, though no fire or further failures occurred. Within minutes, they were safely evacuated from the aircraft and standing on the taxiway as maintenance personnel swarmed the damaged T-38. Chief Riley was among the first to reach them, moving with surprising agility despite his age. His hands were shaking more noticeably than usual, whether from the stress of the situation or simply the normal progression of his condition. Sam couldn't tell. "Outstanding work, all of you," he said, his eyes moving from Rodriguez to Sam and Wang. "Particularly you, Cadet Mitchell. Accessing that emergency system under those conditions was no small feat." "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Chief," Sam replied truthfully. "You knew exactly where the system was and how to activate it." "Just doing my job," Riley responded with characteristic modesty. His attention turned to the aircraft where maintenance personnel were already examining the damaged engine area. "I need to inspect the failure point. Excuse me." As he walked toward the aircraft, Sam noticed Thompson and Delgado approaching with Major Briggs. They had landed shortly after Rodriguez's aircraft and had witnessed the emergency from their trail position. "That was incredible," Thompson said, his earlier arrogance completely absent. "We could see you working on something in the cockpit during final approach. Was that the hydraulic accumulator Chief Riley mentioned?" Sam nodded. The fasteners were nearly seized. Without his specific knowledge of where to find it and how to activate it, we might not have had sufficient control authority for landing. "Those shaky hands know more about these aircraft than all of us combined," Delgado acknowledged, his tone reflecting genuine respect rather than the mockery he had once directed toward the chief. The following day, the entire squadron gathered for a debriefing on the incident. Major Wells led the discussion, with Chief Riley present to provide technical details of what had been discovered during the post-flight inspection. The initiating failure was a catastrophic turbine blade separation in Engine 2, Riley explained, his trembling hands manipulating a pointer to indicate components on a projected diagram. The separated blade penetrated the engine casing and severed both primary and secondary hydraulic lines, as well as damaging critical electrical conduits. He advanced to the next slide, showing the actual damaged components that had been removed from the aircraft. "This type of cascading failure is extremely rare," he continued. "The aircraft is designed with redundant systems specifically to prevent such scenarios. However, in this case, the physical location of the failure and the specific trajectory of the separated components overcame those redundant protections." Major Wells took over the briefing. "I want to commend Captain Rodriguez for his exceptional airmanship in managing this emergency, and Cadets Mitchell and Wang for their composure and assistance under extreme pressure." She paused, making eye contact with Sam. "Cadet Mitchell, your willingness to attempt a complex mechanical intervention in flight, guided only by radio instructions, demonstrated courage and competence beyond what we typically expect at this stage of training." Sam felt a flush of pride at the recognition, but knew the credit belonged elsewhere. "Thank you, ma'am, but I was only following Chief Riley's instructions. His knowledge of the aircraft systems and emergency procedures is what made the difference." Wells nodded acknowledgement. "Which brings me to an important point. 2 weeks ago, some of you found it amusing that Chief Riley's hands shake. Yesterday, those same hands, through the knowledge they've acquired over decades of service, helped save 3 lives and a $30 million aircraft." The room fell completely silent as her words registered. "There's a lesson here that goes beyond aircraft systems or emergency procedures," Wells continued. As officers, you will command and serve alongside people with diverse backgrounds, experiences, and yes, sometimes physical limitations. Your effectiveness as leaders will depend largely on your ability to recognize capability rather than being distracted by appearance. After the briefing concluded, Sam approached Chief Riley, who was gathering his materials. "Chief, I never properly thanked you for yesterday," she said. "Your guidance saved our lives." Riley looked up, his weathered face showing a hint of a smile. "You did the hard part, Cadet. I just provided information." "Information that no one else had," Sam pointed out. "How did you know about that emergency accumulator? It wasn't in any of the standard emergency procedures we studied." "Because I helped install the modification in this fleet 15 years ago," Riley replied. "It wasn't part of the original design, but was added after an incident similar to yours in the early 2000s. He shrugged slightly. "Some things you only learn by being there, doing the work year after year." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "I think I finally understand why you requested assignment here at the Academy instead of accepting retirement." "Do you now?" Riley asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. "You're not just teaching us about aircraft systems. You're teaching us about judgment, about looking beyond the obvious, and about respecting knowledge regardless of its source." Riley considered this, then nodded. "Not bad, Mitchell, not bad at all." 6 months later, as Cadet Squadron 21 approached graduation, they gathered for their final formation photograph on the flight line. By tradition, each squadron selected a motto to be displayed beneath their group photo in the Academy's halls. When the time came to vote on their motto, the decision was unanimous, a tribute to a lesson they had learned through near tragedy. Judge capability, not appearance. Standing in the front row, Sam gazed across the flight line where Chief Riley was working on an aircraft, his hands still shaking but his knowledge and courage beyond question. The cadets who had once laughed at those trembling hands now understood a fundamental truth about military service and leadership, that true capability often came in unexpected packages, and that wisdom sometimes spoke through shaking hands. As they prepared to take their places in the Air Force as newly commissioned officers, this lesson would prove as valuable as any technical skill or tactical knowledge they had acquired during their years at the Academy. It was a lesson about character, judgment, and the true meaning of respect, one that would guide them throughout their careers and beyond.